It's a good AGam in Kansas morning. Good morning. Let's take a look and see what's coming up today. First, Dr. Chris Blevins discusses the different kinds of pesky flies that affect horses and what to do about them. Next, see how different groups are working together to fight the waters of the U.S. legislation. And also learn the importance of soils to our health and well-being. Then Tracy Brunner shares the 5-year industry-wide plan for beef producers from the NCBA and the Cattlemen's Beef Board. We'll finish with Elwynn Taylor, who recommends growers have their risk management tools ready for sudden weather changes. Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, Progress, powered by Kansas farmers. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Hello, I'm Dr. Chris Blevins with Horsing Around from Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center. Today, we're going to talk about flies and the issue with flies, especially during the summer, and how to protect your horse from flies, and is there any diseases that we'd be worried about that can be transmitted by any flies. You have to remember that there's a lot of different flies that are out there that can affect the horse. One being the most common is the house fly that's going to be around a lot of the barn areas. The other one is going to be stable flies. They look very similar to that of the house fly. However, whenever you get bit by a fly, it's not the house fly, it's probably the stable fly. And the stable fly also is the one that's going to bite the horse and cause them to do more stomping and those kind of things around their legs. Horses that are out in pasture will have also 2 other different species of of flies. One being the face fly, which will be around the head of the horse, and then horn flies. They can be around the head or around the back or even underneath the belly of the horse. The horn fly out in pasture can bite, and so again, they're going to be a little smaller. They still look like a house fly, but again, they're going to be a lot smaller. So identifying flies isn't necessarily the biggest aspect, but understanding that there's different species of flies can help in preventing different issues when it comes to that of the horse as an annoyance, but also as a disease that they can transmit. Now, for an annoyance aspect and just trying to protect the horse itself from flies, there's a lot of different fly sprays that are on the market to try to repel or prevent flies from getting on your horse. The biggest thing to remember is most fly products do not last forever. A lot of the oil-based products can last a little bit longer. You just have to be careful because when you start putting a lot of oil on your horse's skin, they can get a dermatitis or just an infection of the skin based on too much oils and stuff on there. So when you look at the product, always read the label and apply it as it's recommended based on the label for that. But don't get frustrated on a lot of the fly sprays because they do get down regulated or broke down by sunlight and evaporation based on sunlight and wind. And so those products are usually, that's the cause. A lot of the flies aren't resistant to the fly spray, it's just the fly sprays aren't lasting that long with on there. There's also some spot-ons that you can put on the mane, the tail, to prevent things. And the aspect of kind of finishing up is that of disease. So there are some diseases that flies can, or biting flies can kind of transmit. One being vesicular stomatitis, and 2 being equine infectious anemia that we test with the Coggins test. Again, the prevalence of those 2 diseases is pretty small, so it'd have to be kind of in the area that you'd have to be worried about. But controlling flies can sure try to help prevent your horse from getting those diseases. If you ever have any questions about flies and fly diseases, contact your veterinarian or give us a call at Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center. I'm Dr. Chris Blevins at Kansas State, and we'll see you around.
Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome.
Tallgrass Commodities offers producers bulk commodities at a reasonable price with reliable service throughout the whole Midwest. To find out more about Tallgrass Commodities, visit tallgrass.us or call 785-494-8484.
Now another gardening tip with Annette Jackson.
Fall is a great time to plant trees, shrubs, and perennials. Root development this fall means more growth with less watering next year. For faster root growth, always use Fertilome Root Stimulator. It is the only stimulator which contains IBA rooting hormone. Use Fertilome tree and shrub food after the plant has been planted for a month.
Save 25% now on Jackson's homegrown hardy perennials. Let Jackson's friendly staff help you select the best plants for your landscape.
Watch AgAm in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com. AgAm in Kansas is brought to you in part by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
So it's really great to be traveling this week in Kansas, and one of the issues that a lot of producers, really landowners throughout the country for the month of August, has been the final rule out of the Environmental Protection Agency known as WOTUS, Waters of the U.S. So this is the rule that we've been talking about for years. It would actually expand the jurisdiction of EPA's jurisdictional reach from a regulatory standpoint over what is navigable waters, so what would have to be required to receive a permit in order to be able to use those waters on your own private property. So NCBA has been adamantly against the proposed rule, which unfortunately is now final and goes into effect the end of August. So what we've been doing in Washington is actually pushing for legislation in the House and the Senate that would completely repeal the final rule as it stands right now. We're happy to report that this legislation was reported favorably out of the House by a very large vote. We've now turned our focus to the Senate for the month of August, really kind of targeting certain senators that come from a large land or a large agricultural or land use state to allow them to realize how important it is to push back against the EPA's final rule moving forward. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get to 60 votes when the Senate comes back in September. But just in case they don't, we're also working with the appropriators, a committee that's actually responsible for the funding of the agencies and the departments from an enforcement standpoint. So we've been working with the Senate and the House spending committees for the EPA's budget to actually restrict funds or prohibit funds from being utilized to actually enforce the final regulation. The catch here will be is that if the final regulation does go into effect the end of August, we've asked for an extension. We're not certain that we're going to get the extension from the EPA. And then we're able to defund their efforts towards the end of September. There will be a 1-month period where WOTUS will actually be on the books and enforceable from a regulatory standpoint. So another action that NCBA is very involved with, and we've actually pooled our producers' resources, so thank you if you're a member of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, because we've utilized your membership dollars to actually join other ag groups as well as land-owning associations. And we've also moved forward on a lawsuit. So NCBA is actively engaged in a lawsuit to sue the Environmental Protection Agency over their reach on WOTUS. Another component of this is some of the lobbying techniques that the agency utilized in order to get additional comments to support the agency's proposed rule. So we've got several members of Congress and the House that are engaged in trying to investigate this further. But what's interesting about DC is that you usually can move the ball across the goal line whenever you have a very broad coalition. So within the agricultural community, we work very closely together on a lot of these environmental issues, but we're part of a Waters Advocacy Coalition that includes other land associations, so National Stone and Gravel, the Professional Golfers Association, the Home Builders, so a very broad group that are actually engaged, many of which in the lawsuit and the litigation as well for the EPA. So again, we're telling people at the end of August, if they have a water that might be WOTUS under the final rule, to please reach out to NCBA, KLA, or your department from your regulatory standpoint here in the state of Kansas, just to ensure that if you know that is or is not going to be deemed a water of the U.S. under the final rule. And then obviously continuing to weigh in with your champions in Congress and both the House and the Senate is always helpful as we move forward with legislation to repeal the final rule altogether, which our focus is on the Senate, or look for ways to defund it from a spending standpoint, which those votes will come forward the month of September.
Earlier in my life, I rode bucking horses in rodeos, and my shoulders took such a beating, and that was probably the reason for having several previous surgeries on both shoulders. About a year ago, I decided that I didn't want to have another surgery. And so I contacted Kansas Regenerative Medicine, took their treatment process. It was relatively pain-free. Now, after 8 months, my shoulders have healed to the point where I think I'm probably 90 to 95% of normal. It takes a couple of months to start to see results with stem cell injections, but at about 3 to 3.5 months, I started to feel better. I started to have less pain and feel real progress. That continued to increase gradually until now at approximately 8 months. And I'm extremely pleased. I've got full range of motion. I can lift weights, I can throw, I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do without a lot of pain previously.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Soils are a wonderful diversity of microbes in this living soil. What most people don't understand is the value of those organisms directly for us, for humans. Over 90% of our antibiotics that we use currently for our health came from microorganisms. There's other bacteria and fungi that we have discovered drugs for. Some people would argue that somewhere around 60% of our anti-cancer drugs come from the soil. And our immunosuppressant drugs, many of them come from soils. We have concerns about the overuse of antibiotics and getting antibiotic resistance. And so by, quote, digging down into the soil, we can now find new antibiotics that will help defeat or overcome the resistance that has occurred naturally from use in humans and animals and other uses. What most people are aware of or think about in related to human health is the nutrition that we get through growing crops provided by the soil. A lot of our nutrients, particularly our micronutrients, zinc, for example, is one micronutrient that's critical for physical and mental development. And that zinc nutrition in some of our depleted soils, particularly it's been shown in Africa and other places, soils that have been degraded, they are low in zinc and do affect the development, human development of children as far as their mental and physical abilities. And again, the microbes play a role in there. Not the zinc is an element that's made up in soil, but the microbes, with their association with plant roots, help grab onto those nutrients, supply the plant that then feeds the world. The soil is an extremely valuable resource, and if we lose the healthiness of that soil, we'll lose that potential organisms that could help us directly.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
When your living depends on agriculture, you can depend on KFRM 550 AM. If you're in the southwest 3/4 of Kansas or the northern half of Oklahoma, catch us at 550 AM on the radio dial. But if that isn't you, listen on your cell phone at TuneIn Radio or on your computer at kfrm.com. We promise to keep you informed, entertained, and company as you go through your day. KFRM 550 AM, the voice of the plains. We would like to join your management team.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Brunner. I'm a rancher and cattle feeder from Ramona, Kansas. I'm also a member this year of the officer team of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, currently serving as the president-elect. Recently, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, along with the Cattlemen's Beef Board, conducted and finished a 5-year industry-wide plan. And this had input from both association, beef board, as well as other industry representatives. There were representatives of academia, packing, as well as ranching and feeding interest represented. Through the industry-wide long-range plan, a roadmap, if you will, for priorities, and more specifically how to reach those priorities is laid out. And with that roadmap and industry long-range plan, then the industry can refer back to it, focus on those priorities, and also follow the supporting bullet points and initiatives that have been identified as helping achieve those priorities. And of course, the overall plan focuses on increased and continued profitability for the beef industry, opportunity in the beef industry for all participants. Well, Heather, the U.S. beef industry is very diverse. We raise cattle on every corner of the United States, from shore to shore, from mountain to swamp. All cattle are able to contribute to our beef supply and are part of the beef production system. In addition to beef cattle and cattle that are bred specifically to harvest forage and produce beef, we also have a large contingency of dairy cattle. In fact, over 20% of our current domestic beef supply comes from dairy beef. Heather, the American beef industry has always been characterized by rugged, individualistic approaches, and this provides a great interest in grassroots producers getting involved in their industry organizations, contributing their time and their talents and their interests to help make the industry a better place for everyone. And what it does is provide more opportunity for all, whether they're newcomers, whether they're an old family ranch that's been in the business for generations. The American beef industry continues to be one of the strongest areas where free enterprise is still growing strong.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Now another gardening tip with Annette Jackson.
Now is the time to overseed your lawn. The success of your lawn depends on the quality you plant and the proper fertilizer. Plant 100% weed-free seed with top-rated varieties tested by KSU. Always use Fertilome New Lawn Starter for faster, stronger root development. Don't waste time and money with lower quality seed from the box stores.
Join the Jackson's Greenhouse WIBW Garden Club and save 10% on your lawn seed and Fertilome New Lawn Starter.
This segment brought to you by Heinen Brothers Ag. Farmers helping farmers by offering quality aerial and ground application. fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia. Call today to protect your crop yield.
Well, we've just come out of the second strongest La Nina, the opposite of El Nino, that we have had in the recorded history of about 200 years. And this second strongest one brought us a disastrous drought, the drought we had in the Corn Belt of 2012. That's the first official drought, widespread drought, that we've had in the Corn Belt since 1988. And that's because of that La Nina. Well, coming out of a very strong La Nina, a pendulum, when you push it way off to the left, is likely to swing far to the right and then swing quite a ways to the left again. So we're expecting that we are in a period of extremes, or volatility, going from one extreme to the other in weather from year to year, or maybe it will be more like in 18-month periods to 18-month periods. This strong El Nino does give us a 70% chance of an above trend line yield for both corn and soybean in the Corn Belt. That means that we would have perhaps lower prices if other factors don't come into play, and we'll let the economists discuss that, but at least greater yields to deal with. And also, this can have another effect up in the wheat country of the Northwest. When we have record high corn yields, we don't have record high wheat yields because they happen in different places, where the effect of El Nino is exactly the opposite. When we've gone through a similar situation, we've had an El Nino last a full 2 years rather than the normal 14 months, which is the average for an El Nino. So if it goes its 14 months, that gets us well into 2016 and off to a good start for the crop, but it could still go bad after that, in fact, like it did back in 83. The main thing is, with El Nino, we tend to have closer to average conditions rather than extremes. That is, the summer is not oppressively hot. When there's an El Nino, the winter is not bitterly cold. And that is good news for people with cattle outside and people with winter wheat sticking up out of the ground. And this is a real factor, because we don't get a sudden change from La Nina to El Nino. That's a gradual one over months, a gentle change. But when a strong El Nino ends, it can suddenly go to a La Nina condition, such as the major drought we had in 1988 began just weeks after the end of an El Nino as we went into a La Nina. So we can suddenly shift, and you have to be ready in your risk management for a sudden change. Are we going to have 3 years or 4 years of high yield? No, suddenly this is a bad year. Or maybe it's still going to stay a good one. After El Nino, you must be ready for the yields to change quickly, and accordingly the prices of the grain to change, and all the reverberations that will have through other markets. We have a lot of history to back up this idea that we are in a pattern, that this 25 years will be highly volatile, not 3 years in a row of record high yields, not to say there won't be 2, but not likely 3. If you're a farmer, then you can remember the 80s and remember what I should have done, do it this time, because it may be a repeat.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff Progress, powered by Kansas farmers. Watch AgAM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com.